Looking inside the stainless sensation, the most incredible story in automotive history by Alexx Michael.
What's your opinion about the whole thing, with the receivership that they waited to close the company exactly on the day that John got arrested? I mean, to me, that doesn't sound like a, coincidence or anything.
No, it wasn't a coincidence. I there were very few people in the know. I think, with the benefit of hindsight, I was running what was left in Dunbury at that time, okay, for the receivers, right up until the day of John's arrest. We were working towards restarting production at the instruction of the receivers, because the receivers were so convinced that John was raising the money, they were making plans, and we were making up lists of employees to rehire, to bring back, to restart car production. Okay, I went home that day to my apartment in the Warren House, just on the factory site. Had supper, the phone rang, and it was Paul Schul, who was Sir Kenneth Cork's number 2 receiver, and he said something like, "Barrie, sorry, call the people together tomorrow. It's all over. It's liquidation." And my reaction is, "Paul, come on, what on earth are you talking about? Under your directions, we've been making plans all day to get people back to work, and now you're telling me with no apparent reason we're closing? You got to tell me more." And he said, "Barrie, I can't tell you more." I don't think he could.
Yeah.
I think Sir Kenneth Cork might have known more, but he wasn't going to make that call.
Of course not.
He delegated it to his number 2 guy. I'm absolutely convinced that Thatcher knew, and I'm absolutely convinced that James Pryor knew. And they knew because the FBI had told MI5 or MI6 or whatever, and it had been passed up to prime ministerial level because of the known interest. So it all occurred, I think, within 24 hours of really the setup, the FBI knowing that this is the day we're going to set him up. Right?
Yeah,
because John's flying out to LA for the privilege.
And he pretty much he called you at around the time when John arrived in LA. Because if you say
the call was about 9 o'clock in my evening.
Okay, so that's 9 o'clock in the evening, so that's around noon in LA.
Yeah.
Or depending on
John's
whatever.
on his way to the hotel.
Exactly. So it's okay, now no more need to.
And of course, then I wake up the next morning. I have a radio alarm at 8:30, and the headlines on the radio program news is that John DeLorean's been arrested. So I woke up pretty quickly that morning.
Yeah, I bet you did.
I had a terrible job of having to go into the plant to call the workforce together, those that were left, and break the news. They'd all heard the same thing on the radio, of course.
Yeah.
Absolute shock, devastation, because the workforce worshipped John.
Yeah. It's just such a crazy story, if you think about that a government, or actually probably 2 governments, because in the US they needed that big name for Reagan's campaign about what was it called, war of drugs or something like that.
And Nancy Reagan's thing, yeah.
Exactly. Well, Nancy was one of those people that just also wanted her name in the press, and what could be better than saying, oh, look, that guy that left General Motors, it turns out he's a drug dealer.
Yeah, they needed somebody who was desperate for to raise money one way or another. John was the perfect target.
And I mean, a lot of the press, I remember, but when I went to all those newspapers, you know, from that period, and like all the stuff that was made up in one newspaper, they said like that they used the cars to transport cocaine from Northern Ireland to the States, and then like one newspaper said like they arrested him when he arrived at the airport, that he had something like 2 suitcases full with heroin that he bought somewhere or that he wanted to sell. And it's just like there was so much weird press, you know, and nothing of it had to do with reality. And even the video of his arrest, if you look at it exactly, and even his lawyer stated that in a couple of interviews, that the video was doctored together. Because like first you see them, when you look at the version that's on TV, you first see somebody bring in the suitcase with cocaine, and then they cheer, you know, with like the champagne and everything. But the original video was that first they celebrated the business deal and were drinking the champagne, and then one of those guys brought in the cocaine. So, but like for the American TV, because you know they love the magic story, they just edited the video.
Yeah, it's just, you couldn't make it up, could you?
No.
There was a man who had a dream. You see his name on the back of your car. Oh!